all set.
Hello, friends. Something happened on the way to Shamballa. What was that old um, Broadway hit? A funny thing happened on the way to the forum. Well, okay, that's that was my issue, and I don't even want to try to understand what happened. I guess I just thought I was there, but I was looking and I was seeing that, well, I'm very much alone. I wonder why this is, since a reminder was sent forward for this day on the 24th for 5 o'clock GMT to discuss Shambhala. But my two very helpful co-workers, BL and Joe, rescued me from splendid isolation and rescued you from just waiting. Well, anyway, I think what I'll do is repeat a little bit of what I said so I don't have to somehow work out a splice, which is never nice and involves other people's efforts. Um, I guess you can see the statement that speaks of three major planetary centers and the radiation going forth from them. And of course, we're very familiar with the idea of these three centers, but even now we're just trying to come en rapport, since it is the second great major solar system, and since we do have a second-ray soul on our planet, and as well, uh, the solar logos has that second-ray soul, we're trying to come en rapport with hierarchy and all it can mean to the governance, the methods of governance in humanity. So he's going to, as far as the reach toward Shambhala, some of us may be reaching in that direction. But since even the members of the hierarchy cannot, except for certain first-ray masters, cannot simply go into the door of Shambhala, speaking symbolically. For us, it's simply a question of learning how to align more fully with the divine will. And that is a prospect for the future. But because the Christ, who is the director of hierarchy, is so much involved with the higher two planes, the monatic and logoic, where the council chamber of Shambhala is found, we have an opportunity to have this rapport with the divine will facilitated during the coming years of the Aquarian age. And we have to learn to think in those terms. But of course, first, we have to understand more about it before we can say, well, okay, from the atmic plane and even from the monadic and logoic planes, are coming those lines of energy which will facilitate our understanding of the divine will. So here, right before page 22, DK tells us that he says, I suggest that you endeavor to see the three major ideologies. Now, may I add, he's going to expand on this thought, that you endeavor to see the three major ideologies with which you have perforce to deal in terms of three efforts which are emanating from three planetary centers. Now he will enlarge on that. You will thus gain, he says, a more synthetic viewpoint and a deeper understanding of the slowly emerging world picture. A world picture, may I add, that one day will very much include the energy streams from Shamballa, even if at the present time we perhaps, if at all, receive them very weakly, let's say. Now, I am trusting that you both see and hear. I've been having a little, well, like I say,
yes, we see your text and we hear you fine, Michael.
That's good. Thank you so much, Bill. Well, you know, when a computer's on its last legs, and this particular computer is kind of staggering around the room, there's no telling what will really come through. Now, this is October 24th, okay, and we're a little late in the day here, but we are going on. And DK tells us his words. You know, I always try to distinguish, well, there should be no problem really, between his words and what I may add, okay? He says, is it not possible that, let's see here, is it not possible that the ideologies which we have been discussing are the response, distorted and yet a definite and determined sensitive reaction to the energies playing upon humanity from the two major centers? I guess if I were to interpolate something, I would say from hierarchy and also from the human center itself, thus involving, because of the rays of our planet, the second ray, soul, and the third ray, personality. In other words, the second and third aspects we can somewhat receive. Now, increasingly, if we are very patient and humble about it, the Shambhala influence of the will start coming through. So, he says, I would like to suggest that the ideology which is embodied in the vision of the totalitarian states, and may I add, a vision which has been quite destructive and depriving the human beings in those states of their true freedom. That this vision of the totalitarian states, the Tibetan says, is an erroneous but clear-cut response to the influence of the will. Now, we had a very bad experience concerning this kind of totalitarianism, and once DK said it's not so much monarchy that we have to defeat as it is totalitarianism. And we can see that regardless of what were the rays of Germany, it was it became under the false interpretation of the will as Nazism. It became a totalitarian state, and there was a group of men, 7 of them, that enforced that totalitarian attitude. So far, what we receive from Shamballa is, or has been, well, in most cases, erroneously appropriated. However, clear-cut. So DK is saying here, I would like to suggest that the ideology which is embodied in the vision of the totalitarian states is an erroneous but clear-cut response to the Shambhala influence of the will. I think we really do see this in regard to China with its first-ray soul, and it does have a third-ray personality, so that first-ray soul is not tempered by a soft line ray the way it is in India. Yes, a first-ray soul and a very high influence of Shambhala, we might say, works through Darjeeling. But the fourth-ray personality of India somewhat moderates the situation, at least in my opinion. So it's been destructive at first, this appropriation or misappropriation of Shambhala influence. And now there are Shambhala impacts, and they have occurred rarely in human history, but in 1825 or so, at the time of the conclave, there was a kind of Shambhala impact, and many changes occurred, including many wars during the 19th century and the 20th century. There have been, well, another Shambhala impact in, what was it? Well, definitely the year 1975 and the year 2000. And DK talked about the most recent Shambhala impact as not having necessarily to work out quite so destructively. Perhaps the influence of hierarchy under the number 2 would moderate that somewhat. But this is an energy rarely used with intelligence and love and with heart and in relation to the great second ray. Now, he did say there was a very good use of this Shambhala energy by the reformer Ataturk of Turkey, who was, I guess, a first-ray soul and tried to sweep away many of the old encrusted influences which prevented Turkey from evolving as it should. Of course, there has been a relapse under the Islam and in general the Abrahamic religions that have in DK's idea outlived their usefulness. They have to be reformed. Along came Ataturk. He was such a reformer. And DK said, we will be surprised to learn how wisely he used the Shambhala force, even though personally he had some minor flaws and liabilities. Well, who doesn't have such flaws and liabilities? So I want to read this again from the Tibetan. I would like to suggest that the ideology, this is, by the way, I have to insert a time of competing ideologies with instinctual telepathy at work and the prevention of true thought on the part of so many. Okay, that's my little insert there. But he says, DK goes on to say, I would like to suggest that the ideology which is embodied in the vision of totalitarian states is an erroneous but clear-cut response to the Shambhala influence of will. Now let's just pause for a moment and see what that means to us. I mean, you know, so often we say, well, why can't that country be more like us? We who are in the Western democracies. Well, they're just marching to a different drummer. And they are attuned ultimately with their first ray souls or their general responsiveness. They are attuned to the Shambhala impulse. And room has to be made to honor the contribution of that principle of monarchy, as long as totalitarianism does not deny the freedoms that should be coming to humanity at this juncture in its development, because it very well could. There are the groups that seek to have first ray willful hegemony over all the others, and their time is not really yet. In the next solar system, the will impulse of Shamballa will be the major impulse conditioning civilization. So, okay, a clear-cut response excuse me, to the Shambhala influence of will, and that, DK goes on to say, the ideology behind the democratic ideal, I guess they're all ideals, but on democracies are on the 2-4-6 line, that the ideology behind the democratic ideal constitutes a similar response to the universality which the love of hierarchy prompts it to express. Now, we should pause here for a moment to recognize that the coming Aquarian age is known for its expression of a universal attitude. Now, what will that mean to us? Well, it is certainly an inclusive attitude, and that is different, quite different from the exclusivity and intended dominance of the totalitarian states, as they presently do not much work in tandem with the love-wisdom energy. So DK, repeating, the ideology behind the democratic ideal constitutes a similar response to the universality which the love of the hierarchy prompts it to express. We notice that right these days, even in the two parties contending for leadership within the United States, and it's not there alone. And then DK goes on and says, and that communism is of human origin, embodied, embodying that ideology, again, ideology, which humanity has formulated on its own. Now, I would say that for us, real progress, and I don't mean only the United States, I mean real progress for humanity involves adopting a democratic ideal or a totalitarianly intending ideal, which includes through the heart center the ideals of democracy. I don't think any country can completely abandon the will to promote some kind of association with the democratic ideal. Because it's just so inclusive that it wants to guarantee to everyone their rights as a human being and not to deal with the forces of hate and repulsion, exclusion. Democracy, although it depends on how it's applied, is the watchword of the day. So I'm going to make this larger so we can bear it in mind. And communism. Now, it maybe doesn't shock us to learn that the Essene communities at the time when the initiate Jesus was growing up, reaching maturity, they were practicing a form of benevolent communalism, communism, and the principle of sharing, which the totalitarian groups have difficulty with, many of them, was in full flower at that time. Okay, thus, says the Tibetan, let's see here, right, glad to see you all, indeed. Thus, the three aspects of God's nature are beginning to take form as three major ideas. They seem to be coming out of the spiritual triad in a way, but they are three great conditioning governmental ideas. So, DK says, thus the three aspects of God's nature, three major aspects, are beginning to take form as three major ideas. And what we see upon the planet at this time are the distorted human reactions to spiritual impulses emanating from three different centers, but all equally divine in their essential natures, in their essences. Ponder on this. Now, this is written, as I say, 80, 90 years ago. I think following the decisive war which ended the Great War 1914 to 1945. So the distorted human reaction to spiritual impulses emanating from different centers. Okay, but all of them, the Tibetan goes on to say, they are all equally divine in their essential natures and in their essences. And we have to ponder on their shared co-divinity. I guess it's rather complex when you think about it. How is it that a collection of people which ends up being a nation in a particular area of the world has a particular ray to express? How does that really happen? And I'd say there's much pondering left to do. Much pondering. Okay. I'm just trying to get this well, I'm not doing so well, but I can do it that way. Now, I wonder if people like you and like me know what country or countries we will live in our next incarnation, and why that may be the case. I think it's not easy to determine, but the solar angel does know and sees several lives ahead into that prospect. Now, let's go on with what the Tibetan says. I have brought this to your attention and discussed these three basic modern schools of thought. And may I here add that there were ancient schools of thought in the 6 schools of Indian philosophy, which at this point he is not discussing. So he says, I've discussed with you these basic modern schools of thought because the potency of their idealism is affecting every person capable of thought upon the planet. If we can hold the mind steady in the light of the soul, one or other of the great ideals will begin to come through to us. Of course, again, you can't just say, well, hold the mind steady in the light of the soul. This really has to be practiced. So, yeah. In other words, because of these conditions, every one of us is being affected. Okay. And to a certain extent, even people who are not capable of thought are being affected by the downflow of some of these energies. We have to combine the 10 means of telepathy with this statement by the Tibetan that if we can think, we are going to be affected. Okay. Not one of you, says the Tibetan, is immune from their effects. Now, let me it may not be our preferred mode, but we are all affected. Okay. Not one of you, says the Tibetan, is immune from their effects. Not one of you, but is inclined to range yourself upon one side or another, fighting furiously, and under the cloak, there's a word, the cloak, which suggests there is a veiling process going on, fighting furiously and under the cloak of so-called adherence to principle for what appeals to you. I guess it's suggesting that each one of us is a naturally born totalitarian, authoritarian, a naturally born Democrat, or communist. In the larger understanding of that term, not the Russian Communistic Party under the supervision of a totalitarian, basically, Joseph Stalin, and now Putin taking that kind of position. So all of us are affected by what appeals. Most of us, he says, let's see, what have we got here? No. That was a meditative moment. Oh my. Okay. So let's see what I have here. And yeah. Well, it's true. It's true. We sometimes think it's simply a choice we make, but we do have inclinations which we consider to be adherence to our principles, and basically is adherence to what appeals to us. And it appeals because there is something innate in our makeup. And that something, of course, could be strongly related to our ray structure. But DK goes on and says, most of you are, nevertheless, far more affected by the methods employed to materialize the ideas and by the quality of their exponents than you are by the ideas themselves. These you could hardly define if asked to do so. So it's just another statement of truth. Seems yeah. So somehow we all have this materialistic bias. And when it comes to the real essences of the three great modes of government, we might be hard-pressed, DK is saying, to actually define them. We are much more likely to talk about how to materialize the ideas and who are the principal materializers of these ideas. And that, of course, would get us into the realm of politics. DK goes on to say, you are affected by their impact upon your emotional bodies, not your minds. So affected by the impact of any of these three systems of governance, more in the emotional body, not so much in the mind held steady in the light for deep understanding. So again, repeating what DK has said, you are affected by their impact upon your emotional bodies, not your minds, after these divine impulses have filtered through from Shamballa and the hierarchical centers into and through the human center, and have then been seized upon and applied to specific national, racial, and political conditions. In other words, we do not have a pure understanding of the okay. DK is simply being frank about our abilities here. You are hardly at all affected by the true or by the pure idealism, by the pure idealism which gave them birth and which lies behind them as the motivating, though unrecognized, impulse. Our limitations are here being presented, yes. You cannot grasp or view these great mental trends that may be coming from the cosmic mental plane and beyond. You cannot grasp or view these great mental trends, as does the hierarchy. Hence, much of your confusion and your difficulty. Well, our limitations are laid before us. And how and where we can apply the way we receive the three major impulses are made known to us. Just pause for a minute here and see that to which you are inclined. Of course, maybe the country in which you find yourself will give a strong hint, quite possibly. Now, he does lay these out, and we are somewhat familiar with the way of thinking that is in this chart. So he says, if we consider these three major or great planetary centers and their relationship in tabular form, we can get the idea more clearly in mind. So I'm not sure that we are seeing this the way I would hope we're seeing it. Let's see. Here's how I hope we would be seeing it. In this way. Here, Shamballa, hierarchy, and humanity are lined up. And I think we can go through these just a little bit. So I'm going to look at this from the perspective of the compilation. When it comes to dealing with Shamballa, the energy is willpower, and yes, of course, it's connected with the planetary head center, maybe receiving its stimulation from the cosmic mental plane and beyond. It is called the Holy City. I'm remembering the Joffre illustration where there is a skull, and through the skull a path leads, and there ahead of us is the Holy City. Well, maybe. It could also be the New Jerusalem. Now, we have here, emanating from Shamballa, the purpose and the plan that suggests in a very high manner and in time and space the carrying forth of the purpose. It's associated with the spiritual pineal gland. Maybe among other things, in the center, in the middle of the head, and in etheric matter. And this is dealt with in a treatise on cosmic fire. It is here that the life aspect is to be found. I mean, right now we're doing our best to detect the love aspect. So the life aspect is still quite a reach. The ruler of Shamballa is Sanat Kumara, the Lord of the world, the Ancient of Days, given the name Melchizedek. I have a song written for the Capricorn solar fire ritual, and it has to do with being a priest of the order of Melchizedek. St. Paul emphasized this. Now, there are higher emanations than the Melchizedek emanation. The planetary logos itself on the logoic plane is a higher emanation. But this is the Father in heaven to whom the Christ prayed. Now that's Shamballa from a certain perspective. Now the next division in this tabulation is the hierarchy itself. Its energy is different. It is the love wisdom energy. It is associated with the planetary heart center. I wonder where we can locate that center. Probably on the cosmic astral plane for one thing, and when it comes to the etheric location, it would be on the second of the cosmic ethers. And it's called the New Jerusalem. Well, it has to do with consciousness and the instilling of group unity. Jerusalem apparently is no longer the holy city or place of spiritual exaltation, which it is reputed to be. And we do need contact with the hierarchy as a new type of love wisdom, Jerusalem, enhancing the consciousness is formed. And finally, What have we here? Haha, I missed that part. The ruler is important, and even though the hierarchy is the ashram of Sanat Kumara, it is ruled by the Christ, who is the world Savior. Now, a most interesting designation follows that humanity is expressing active intelligence, more strongly and appropriately expressed in the previous major solar system. It has to do with the planetary throat center found on the cosmic etheric physical plane as the third subplane, the atmic plane. And this is interesting. It's called, they all have kind of city-like images. The city standing for square. Well, the number 4 is in there. And that's because the hierarchy of initiates, which is the human creative hierarchy, when it begins to work, it works from the 4th level, the 4th subplane, 4th etheric subplane, the Buddhic plane, and works etherically, cosmically etherically, from the 4th level as well. It is the 4th kingdom. And the quality here is self-consciousness, not just the larger consciousness. And this is really interesting. Who is the ruler? Well, it's not Sanat Kumara, it's not the Christ, and is it Lucifer, considered as the solar angels, the light bearers, or is it Lucifer, considered as the fourfold personality of man, rebelling against the angel of the presence? See, Lucifer has a number of meanings. One of the meanings is that of the rebel who does not accord with the higher principles. But the other meaning is much higher and has to do with the ruling solar angel projected as the angel of the presence. Now, mankind has to set aside this rebellious nature and conform to the angel of the presence and to the telepathic suggestions of the master. Interesting, this ruler is called the son of the morning. And is there a sense in which we are entering into the dawning day of a new and higher guardianship by the angel of the presence, the solar angel, angel of the presence, which is another way of looking at who Lucifer is. Now, in the strictly human sense, we're dealing with the prodigal son, who as a member of the human kingdom is returning unto the Father, having awakened in the outer world to his very deprived state. And what did he say? Something like, even, this is paraphrase, in my Father's home, even the servants have more than I do. So the whole question of the evolving human kingdom through the evolving personality is covered by the prodigal son. Now, this is a very important tabulation, and it's really important to understand the two modes of behavior of Lucifer. From one point of view, a bad reputation, a rebel against God. From another point of view, a benevolently fallen angel, such as the angel of the presence is, as a projection of the solar angel, bringing the light of morning and the dawning day of a much higher way of appreciating divinity, bringing that to humanity. Now, the present human beings who were individualized in the previous solar system, they lagged behind the Luciferian human beings who ventured to Sirius for training as solar angels. And then they returned to this solar system because they departed from the previous major solar system, and they're offering present more present day more retarded humanity the benefit of their illumination in the Syrian system. So they make it possible for man to undertake his journey back to the Father's home as a member of the fourth kingdom in nature. The interplay between these various lives is intricate and necessary to each other. And one day, of course, we will know more about how this is all accomplished. Meanwhile, we are the prodigal son, and we are returning to our shambolic home on the second and first subplanes of the cosmic etheric physical plane. I mean, we seem, I think, so confined here that these higher prospects are not offered to us with so that we can assimilate the reality of them. But this is what our destiny will be. We have something called Monatic Destiny. Now, the Christ and the Buddha have partially fulfilled that destiny and will further fulfill it when the Aquarian age is coming to an end. And then they will be sent on their respective paths after having completed the seventh initiation. Now, what DK says here, these three centers are closely interrelated and must be thought of in their entirety as expressions of divine livingness, as embodying three great stages in the unfoldment of God's plan, and as constituting three major centers in the body of the, quote, one in whom we live and move and have our being. Now, who is that being in whom we live and move and have our being? Who is that? And from an immediate point of view, it is our planetary logos. Pause to think for a moment. We live and move and have our being within the consciousness, within the vital energies of the planetary logos. Well, within the sun as well, we live and move and have our being, and if we carry it very far, within the entire universal logos, unreachable by us, of course, at this point, we live and move and have our being. What does it do for us? A sense of reality. When we think of living and moving and having our being within the planetary logos. Well, I think that will be it for now. Students who have studied as you have, says the Tibetan, can relate, if they so choose, these three centers to the three solar systems referred to in a treatise on cosmic fire. And, well, this is really interesting. I'm tempted to go on. Well, maybe I will, just to read it. In the first solar system, says the Tibetan, the center which is humanity was prepared, and the principle of intelligence came into manifestation. This is the first major solar system. In the second solar system, that's this one, second major, the hierarchy of love made its appearance and must eventually come into full manifestation upon the physical plane, thereby enabling the love of God to be seen. Now that is, a little bit of that is happening with what we call now the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ. And then, per our named subject here, in the next solar system, the center which we today, now who knows, may I add in the future what it will be called, watch out for his qualifiers, because he gives hints through the qualifiers. So DK says, the center which we today call Shamballa will manifest intelligently and through love, the will aspect of deity. Okay, do we have that? The will aspect of deity will be manifested intelligently and through love. Now, right now, such a manifestation is very rare. As I told you, he pointed out Ataturk as an example. But when he talked about Hitler and Stalin and Franco, were there any others? He simply said they were disciples of Shambhala. And he did not, except in the case of Hitler, well, he pointed out the mostly negative quality of their manifestation, but did not elaborate. except in the case of Hitler and of, positively speaking, Ataturk. He didn't say much about Franco, but he was another one. And there were several others, I think. DK goes on to say, it is only, however, in this second solar system that all these three centers, expressing three divine aspects, meet simultaneously at various stages of livingness. And why is that? You know, it has to do, I think, with the synthetic ray of love wisdom being so strong in this solar system and pulling into harmony these three modes of expression. So they meet simultaneously at various stages of livingness. Shambhala, in a way, though very powerful, the least living, and maybe the strict intelligence fading in the presence of the great love wisdom ray. It is interesting to note that it is only through human beings, now boy, this is interesting, only through human beings that these centers can ever come into true functioning activity. Well, there's something about humanity being the fourth, you know, a central kingdom, only through humanity. Now that has to be pondered. That has to be pondered. And maybe we can access all three in this solar system, but of course it won't be the divine will, the way the divine will appear in the next solar system. It will not be that. That is going to be a whole different method of individualization. Maybe we'll get to that in Cosmic Fire, perhaps, and it will be understood how the divine will be the perpetrator of the individualization process. And of course, some of us returning as trained solar angels will be active at that time, helping with this monatic type of individualization. So today we have a very synthetic task under the great indigo ray. And even though our main concern is the love wisdom energy, aspects of the other two will be brought into relation aspects of the Shamballa energy and the pure intelligence energy from a solar system past and a solar system to come will be brought into relation. And we are training to understand how these three, even now, can begin to relate. Okay, friends, that's going to be enough. Some might say more than enough. We've made it to page 24. And I'm going to bring this down. It is the end of discussion number 7 about Shamballa. You know, when I look at this compilation, I really have a lot of gratitude to Zach, who made it possible to access such things and to emphasize major points. And by the way, I have to say that we are now in the Scorpio energy. And so decisions we have made will now be in effect. And let's see, BL or Joe, does it say when this will be November something? Possibly. Or does anybody?
Hold on, I'm looking.
Okay. November something, I would guess. About 2 weeks from now, I would guess.
Yes, it looks to me like November 14th.
Okay, very good. So that's what we'll
At 6 p.m. because the time changes this Sunday for you guys.
So
Next
you
week,
say
a week from now.
6 p.m.
Yes.
GMT.
Right.
But it will still be, our time will still be 8, I guess, because we just add 2 hours. Okay, friends. Gosh, I just have to sing the praises of the Tibetan as I study in these later days carefully what he is offering. I'm just further amazed at the organized quantity and depth of what is conveyed. And maybe you are too, and wish to be in a position to take advantage of the gift to bring you closer, bring all of us closer to an elevation of our consciousness and of the energies that we can actually wield instead of just talk about. So I think for a couple of days we won't have anything particularly, but by Wednesday we will. I believe science of triangles, then identify as being on Thursday, then cosmic fire on Friday. And any one of these books, well, they're not all books, but any one of
Michael,
these yeah.
I think I have a little different schedule than you have looking at Tuia's calendar.
Uh-huh.
I have Nothing Monday or Tuesday, like you said. Wednesday is the Ask Triangles meditation. Thursday is the reappearance. See, this is the
Yep.
week that would have been what you were talking about, but it was the full moon stuff. Then
Okay.
on Friday is the dissipation of glamour. On
Right.
Saturday is the climate. On Sunday is calling all angels and attracting resources.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm just trying to get it all together, and it really helps to have some guidance in that matter. Okay. Well, now we know. Okay. So, let's see. Do we have anything that needs to be addressed or that people would like to address?
I see a couple of thank yous, but I don't see any questions.
It's difficult to.
There, just as I said that, I got one. I wonder if the last line of the great invocation, this is from Joe, I wonder if the last line of the great invocation may give a hint to the outcome of the Lucifer impact shown for humanity. That is, may love and light and power restore the plan on earth. Maybe live and move and have our being imply the same.
Yeah, I think it's a good thought. It has a lot to do with moving into the fifth kingdom. And if we start thinking about the one in whom we live and move and have our being, that will transport us to that higher point of tension where we will be in a greater position to combine the three, light, love, and power, to restore the plan. All are needed, The totalitarian governments imply power. The love, of course, the democracies, and the light of intelligence, the socialism, the communism, evolved by humanity itself. Somehow, we have to achieve this synthesis, mostly coming from heart telepathy, as the Tibetan lays out in the book Telepathy and the Etheric Vehicle. Without that, we cannot fuse and blend these different modalities that people adhere to with such tenacity, as if they are right and everyone else has some kind of mistaken ideal. It's an inadequate circumference and depth of understanding that has victimized most people. And it is a danger, because there will be the attempt to throw away the values that are coming in on the other two, other than the one that you as an individual or your group may be following. So we have to get ready now for a different way of life. We are climbing the ladder of consciousness. We are building the Antakarana. We are able to receive telepathically from higher sources. And it's a much more living way of living than to lock ourselves up in our particular ideology and find fault with every other ideology. Now, maybe none of these ideologies is applied with full love wisdom. Probably there is an erroneous application, but we have to understand that they can be, and that even now we can begin as human beings entering the fifth kingdom of nature. We can begin to fuse and blend the ideologies, even though it should be the democratic ideology, the ideology of inclusive democracy, which gives us our major thrust at this time. And that's why, power for its own sake, intelligence for its own sake, if left without attention to the growing love wisdom, both of those by themselves would place us, different countries, and in general humanity in danger. We are in a dangerous situation. In the United States, some experts in the field of tyranny say that we are now involved in a slow-moving coup, a takeover of government by a cult of personality. This could be a great danger. It's happening in the US, where the principal fight for democracy is occurring, but it's not only there. Following the US example, that same battle is raging elsewhere. And the ignorant totalitarians, manipulated by demagogues, are at work guaranteeing that the desirable democracy, in whatever form it might manifest, has no chance. So the next few years will tell a very big story about whether that battle for the democratic form of government, I mean, I'm not saying, you have to be a Democrat or something like that, but whether that battle has a desirable outcome for individuals, groups, and the planet as a whole. We're thinking now, are we not, friends, in planetary terms? And if we don't, we are contributing to the rampant selfishness which could possibly take over forms of government all over the world. It would not be a pleasant sight to see the main type of government shoved to the side and ignored, while an energy whose right use is not understood was brought to the fore. Okay, does anybody wish to say anything?
I don't see anything else.
Okay. I'm looking at the list here, and I'm grateful that you are here, and hoping that you are benefiting from going into the Tibetan's material. I don't see how you or I would not benefit. Okay. If there's no one else, then all of us on the communications team, doing different things in different places, but basically holding the ship steady, at least, sorry, moored to some sense of reality and anchored to some sense of planetary welfare. At least that is occurring. People like you and I in our groups, we have to take the welfare of the planet seriously, and we have to realize where the dangers are coming from. And these dangers, well, to any student of esotericism at least, these dangers are obvious, even though they would completely pass the awareness of those who are simply responding to instinctual telepathy, some of which can be very bad because sponsored by the Lodge of Form, highly intelligent, but not caring about the welfare of the planet or humanity. So this will be put up on Makara and put up on YouTube channel. And, I would like to send to a number of you who have requested it the audio transcript. It's a little different form, but given the state of the computer, by the way, I just have to get a new one, I guess, and that's a process also. Given that state, I have not really been able to formulate for you these number of audio transcripts which have been completed. But because BL, Joe, and Harold are posting these programs, at least, you have something that you can work with if you'd like to come back to it and really put in the time. Time management is very difficult, and That's why we're told of the initiate that they can get done in a shorter period of time, so much more than the average individual. They understand the manipulation of time and space, and they know how to work efficiently. And would that we would that we also learn a little something from them. I think we might be amazed at what it takes. So, okay, this will be the, let's see if there's anything else here. Yep. And thank you, everybody. I just remember the double Lucifer.
Okay,
Not just,
Michael.
yeah,
yeah. I thought you told me you had gotten a new computer and that your guys were loading it, but
wait.
Yvonne said if you need a new one, she'll pay.
Oh, well, that's very kind, very kind. Well, we can talk about it. Something is being very kind of you, but something's being lined up even right now. I'll talk to you as it might become necessary. But like to have, well, anyway, it'll be another one of these nice sounding names. I've got an idea pad here, and a sturdy think pad is on its way, or will be on its way. I'm beginning to realize with the kind of stress that I put the computer through, that stability and strength of the computer is highly necessary. And maybe I should just look at the computer to see what's happening to me personally. Maybe we reflect each other. Who knows, But thank you, Yvonne. We'll look into it, eh? We'll see what might be the case. Let's see. It is. Thank you very much. Yeah, we can talk. Okay. All right, friends. So that's going to be it for the moment. And we are so privileged to be able to study with Master DK. And even realizing the degree of our privilege is already a step forward. So love and many blessings to everybody, and we'll be back with programs that I didn't expect, but BL has straightened us out on that point. Okay. So bye for now.